Guys, Brett here with Jensen Arms. I know a couple of you have been asking about the new Gen 5 and want to get a little bit of an idea of what's going on with it, so I figured we'd get you the full review, or at least a quick enough down to the points kind of important one. So, the new Glock Gen 5. In this case, I am using the Glock 17. Reason being is there's a couple cool different features on this one that are slightly different than the 19, which I kind of liked, but love the 19 as well. So let's start off with the obvious points. No finger grooves. Makes it really comfortable for any size hand. I enjoyed the original one, but this one is still comfortable for me. So, awesome addition for those people whose hands it did not fit. The other first obvious thing, we do have the slide stop lever on both sides now. Now this is my biggest concern, and we'll talk about this here once we take it apart. I am really impressed with this part. It does function very well from both sides as a release, even though it was not designed that way. It does actually work well, and again, I'll show you later once we get it apart why that works so well. Alright, the other obvious things on the outside. It is set up similar to a Gen 4, so the mag release or mag catch will still be swappable to the other side. Very good to know. The magazine, we do now have a bright orange follower, because that's the cool new popular thing to do, so Glock has given us that. That's what everybody wanted. One little thing that we did notice too that was pretty neat, it's not necessarily super needed, but it is a nice luxury. We do have a nice smoother mag base plate here, which complements the new grooved mag well very nicely. So we've got the expanded mag well here, and we do have the cut groove like you used to see on some of the older Gen 2s. This was something that was discontinued for a while because nobody liked it. In this case it was back by popular demand. So when you've got your magazine in there, it is easier, if needed, to strip that magazine out for any reason if it does get stuck. So I've got this comfy groove to come up on, and I can easily about that. I had to make more room on the camera. So, last notable point was that magwell. So, magwell, quick release. Awesome additions. Good job, Glock. Now, really quickly, we will touch on the finish. Glock has always been pretty secretive about their finish process because they have changed it up a couple times. They were using that Tennifer process that had to, cease being used for certain reasons. Now, it is still a nitration process that is done on this. So, we still have that original Glock strength, the nitration process done on the base, but what they've done over it is they've actually done an ion bonding process. If you're not familiar with that, it is a molecular bonding process that is so strong it can actually be done on top of anodization. And in the past we've known anodization is a pretty strong process. So this actually is essentially, you could think of twice as strong as any other Glock, because it's the original Glock finish plus that ion bonding process over it. They did this on the entire slide, and I'm almost certain they did this on the barrel as well, so that makes it very smooth. Even smoother than in the past, so functionality is not going to be an issue. Now, first thing we'll do is go ahead and take this apart, and we're going to notice a couple basic things. Alright, so now that we've got our slide off, we can see a couple obvious things here. So, point out before we go too far into it, you can see the safety in here. So, those of you that have ever played with a Glock 43 or 42 will notice that they have taken that design and used it in here, and it's great because I'll show you a couple of reasons why. Let's go ahead and get this spring out. It is the dual spring, so just like in the Gen 4s, these are usually rated around 5,000 to 6,000 rounds, so that's awesome since the original Gen 2s and Gen 3s are usually around 2,000 to 3,000 rounds. So, awesome to have that back. You can see that very nice new finish on here. That should be the ion bonding as well. While I've got this right here, we'll touch on a couple quick points. The crown of the barrel, we do have that recessed crown in there, so that's going to be really nice, and more importantly, we got rid of that polygonal rifling. So we've got what they're now calling marksman rifling. What this does is, now that we've got standard rifling in there, you will have the ability, ideally, to shoot lead through this. So, couple good improvements that people will like, because originally you weren't supposed to shoot lead through your Glock. That was just a pretty standard rule. So this should be a big change for everybody, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this part. Now, before we get to the bottom part, let's touch on this top part here. A couple things out of here. They got pretty tight tension on there. So, back plate off. Got a nice good striker set up on here, or firing pin, whatever you want to call it. We're going to get a lot of people arguing about that. So, technically Glock calls it both now. Originally it had to be a striker. It's a firing pin, guys. So, get our firing pin out. So the same spring cup, same spring, same sleeve. So, that's all good there. But the mass on this firing pin is a lot nicer. It's just going to contact that safety a lot better. And once we get this out, I can show you why. Let's pull out our EDP real fast. Just touch on the EDP really fast. It does have the LCI load bearing piece on there, so just in case there's any questions on that, let's go ahead and get our extractor out. Standard extractor, nothing fancy, but this is my favorite part here, the safety. So the way that they've done this, like I said, is going to be like that Gen 4, and we're going to get some really good contact points on here. You can just see that because we've got a little bit more mass on that, and on the firing pin, the contact is just going to be a heck of a lot better. Very strong there. Now, those of you who aren't familiar with the Glock 43 or 42 safety, the nice thing about this is because we have all of this mass here, we've also got some bleeding spots right here. What this does is it allows, when the safety is in here, if we get a bunch of shrapnel, debris, anything like that, it allows it to bleed out the sides if needed to. Let me get this put together so you guys can see a little bit in here. So, because we've got that extra mass in there now, and it's kind of hard to see from any of these angles, but with it not fully in, you can see that there's a little bit of mass on each side now. What this kind of does is it works in conjunction with the weep hole that we've got right there that's usually for debris. Don't ever oil there. When you've got your debris bleeding out there, now you can also have debris bleeding out the both sides of your safety, so you're not going to get a bunch of gunk jamming it up. You're still going to get functionality no matter what. Awesome change. I love that. I'm super happy about that. Let me put this back together really fast, and I'll show you guys the lower part. Okay. Go, move that out of the way. Alright. Another quick obvious thing that you'll see. This is a 2-pin setup, again, similar to the 42 and the 43, so we don't have a locking block pin now. It's just one primary pin there. And then we've got our rear pin back here for, of course, the back straps. If you want, they do have the bigger one, or it's just going to be your trigger housing pin. So, let's get our trigger housing pin out of there. Doesn't matter on these ones really which one goes first. Now, you're going to notice that this one does come out a little bit harder. So the first time we took it out, we did kind of have to punch it a little bit harder, but there's no real wiggle trick with this one so far that we've discovered. We played with it a couple times, just a matter of the appropriate force to get it out of there. Comes right out. So don't be afraid with that one, and I'll show you why. Same good locking block that we're used to. Move that out of the way. Okay, this is my favorite part. I was worried, really worried about the ambidextrous slide release, or in this case slide stop lever. Anytime this has been done in the past with most guns, what will happen is there's basically the right-handed release or stop, and then the left-handed one is a piece of metal that comes across and is either usually welded or just a piece of metal that's functioning on the right-hand side. Big downside to that is when the left-handed user is using that, eventually it's going to start to wear out. It's going to give because all it's doing is running the right one. So there's always been a downside that there's no true ambidextrous one until lately with some other guns like the MMP 2.0s. So when Glock did theirs and I pulled theirs out, all of my worries and concerns with this were totally blown away. They have a very, very thick piece in here. I mean, this is a sturdy hunk of metal. Now they've done a couple things with this. It is one long piece, very thick, and then a single spring that controls the entire thing. So that's one problem solved. It's an entire piece that works no matter which side you're using it from. The other advantage that they've done here is, we're on the left-hand side now, so for the left-handed users, you'll see there's a little notch right here that they've put in. What that does is it helps when we're pushing down from the left-handed side or the right-handed side. It's going to keep the tension and keep that even, so we're not putting too much strain on one side or the other. Awesome job. I'm super excited about this. I wasn't at first when I saw, that this was going to be an ambidextrous gun. I love it. Very impressed with how that was done. Alright, let's go ahead and pull this out. Take a look at the last couple things before I let you guys go. They have put the completely smooth trigger. You usually see this on the larger frame stuff, the 10mm, the 45s, things like that, and some of the older ones. So no grooves on there, we're back to a smooth trigger. I know a lot of you are probably going to replace the shoe or the entire trigger bar anyways, but just so you know, it is a very nice trigger setup, and we've got that nice smooth face. Alright, other last important note. The trigger assembly back here, instead of having that little dinky trigger spring that we usually have in the rear, those of you that again are familiar with the 42 and 43 will recognize this. We've got a nice little spring that comes up over our cruciform. So putting that back on is a matter of sliding that in there just right, catching that piece, and locking it back on there. So you can see I'm really happy with this. We get a lot more reliability as well as just use out of this spring. Not to say that the other ones wore out faster anyway, but you've got a lot more longevity with this setup, so really happy about that. Alright, I've taken this thing apart a couple times now. I've reviewed it, I've played with it. I might have missed something. If there is something that you guys have any questions about or want to know about, because I'm sure I did miss something this time around, let me know, or come on into Jensen Arms and play with one. We do have the 17 and we do have the 19. There is one last thing I want to show you, but I don't want to take up too much time, so what I'm going to do, stop the video and I'll be back in 1 second once I've got it all back together. Alright, I lied, but I am back. Two quick last things to note. One of my favorite things, this only works on the 17, not the 19, but the way that they've designed it with the slide rails now, when you go to take it apart, you do not have to come all the way forward. Right there, pops off. Simple. Same thing with putting it back together. Just slides right over right there, back together. Now, one last thing, just in case you ever have this problem, we discovered this very early on, but if you ever have any troubles getting your Glock back together, your Gen 5 at least, like this, I'll create the problem for us so you can see. Okay. See how it will not go. Right? Now, what we do, get that off. In order to put the Gen 5 back together, the striker can't be in the rear and the safety can't be engaged. So, what you do, push that safety in, make sure that striker is forward. Striker needs to be forward. If it's back like this, engaged, it will not go back together. So just a neat little trick. One little tip, just remember, push that in, make sure your striker's forward, and voila, back together. Let me know if you guys have any questions, or, like I said, come into Jensen's Arms, play with one.